Okay. That's it, sir.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks, and I want to welcome you to the Public Utilities Subcommittee. Today is Tuesday, March 8th, 2022, and we have three bills before us. Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, I'm Delegate. This is HB 440, HB 622, and HB 801. Yeah, so just a little bit of housekeeping. Please note that the chat room is for ECM committee members only, and I instruct you to abide by that accordingly. So I guess we can go ahead and get started. Council, you want to go ahead and
yeah, House Bill 440 from Delegate Klippinger would increase the maximum capacity of a community solar energy generating system to 5 megawatts. It's currently 2 megawatts. Delegate Klippinger has proposed two amendments in your packet. Number one is a cleanup that addresses an issue raised in the Public Service Commission's informational letter. This would say that a community solar system that is used for net metering may not exceed 5 megawatts. That amends the net metering law accordingly. The other amendment, number two, actually what it does is it essentially allows the larger portion, the larger system, that over 2 megawatts and up to 5 megawatts, to come under the CPCN process. The other issue that was addressed by the PSC's letter of information.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or concern about this particular bill?
I would move the amendments.
Second.
Delegate Howard, it's a question.
Okay, Delegate Howard, go ahead.
One of the concerns was the amount of arable land. How does the bill address that? If we're going to go from 2 to 5 megawatts, you're looking at 27,000 acres to meet that specific need. How does the bill address that?
And
There's nothing in particular in the bill addressing land uses currently.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Charkoulian.
yeah, I just was going to speak to that. I think the thing that's important to remember is the total amount of megawatts that we are going to produce of solar in the state doesn't change. So that's it's the 14.5% carve out that we put together a couple of 2019. Whatever that total megawattage is, doesn't change. The question is, are we going to have a bunch of 2 megawatt projects? Are we going to have 2 megawatt and 5 megawatt projects? Or are we going to have it taken up with 15, 20, 50 megawatt projects, utility scale solar? So, you know, there's discussion about what the appropriate amount of solar is. That's different. I mean, if, you know, what goes on which land, that's a different issue than whether community solar is 2 or 5. I don't think this is going to change that question.
Okay, Delegate Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of the subcommittee, Utility Subcommittee. My question is, do we have any 2 megawatt community solar facilities now? The bill takes us from 2 to 5. Do any 2 megawatt facilities currently exist?
Some of those in the audience may know that. I don't have that information.
I think Robert Graziola. Yeah.
Okay, does anybody in the audience
PSC, the PSC might
okay,
know.
Bob, okay, Bob Garagiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Yeah, there are a number of 2 megawatt community solar projects. I don't know what the exact number is, but there are a number of them. And then going to the earlier question, in addition to the RPS limits that Delegate Charkoulian mentioned, there's also in community solar a cap each year. And so by going from 2 to 5 megawatt, that cap doesn't increase. It actually will take up less land if you do 5 because there's buffers that need to get added. So if you do a 2 megawatt project, you're going to need buffers around the 2 megawatt. If you do 5, those same buffers, if you have to do two megawatts or two megawatts and 1 megawatt, you're actually going to take up more land to equal 5 megawatts than you would because of the buffers if you did 5, but the actual amount won't increase.
And then I guess my other question was to the PSC concerning fiscal note. Hopefully someone from the PSC, I saw Amanda is here. I'm not sure if there's anyone else in addition, but maybe Amanda can help. In the fiscal note, towards the end of the fiscal note, the last couple of paragraphs deals with the impact on local jurisdictions, governments, as well as the private sector. And it says that to the extent that people engage in this activity of 2 to 5 megawatt community solar facilities, that utility prices, would increase potentially. Amanda, I'm assuming this information came from you guys. Can you comment on that?
Sure. Thank you, Delegate. Yeah, I think, when we were trying to come up with the fiscal note and potential impacts, we consulted with a lot of members on our technical staff, and they were trying to come up with some issues regarding impacts on potential prices. I think some of the amendments might address those issues, but I think there will still need to be a lot of work probably done at the stakeholder level to try and just kind of nail down some of the specific details on how all of this will work. But I think that there's some good results done with the recent rulemaking that was passed. And I think that some more progress can be made in that arena as well.
And Amanda, one more question. How many petitions, if that's the proper terminology, do you folks at the PSC currently have from electric utilities concerning increasing rates as a result of the impact of the increase in fuel prices on generating electricity at power plants? Have you had any of those requests, I would think?
It's a good question.
I ask because I know SMECO's cost increased for power by 68% in January, and 68%. So obviously, the rate increases. So that's SMECO, which is a pass through. I can only imagine the investor utilities are potentially worse.
Right. And SMECO is situated a little bit differently because of their cooperative nature. I would say that, especially on the investor-owned utility side, the SOS prices in particular that they pass through to customers are done several years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think anyone would see any immediate impacts, but it might, result in future impacts. But we haven't seen anything really at the present time.
Got it. But so it's a lag. There's a lagging effect of what we're seeing in terms of energy prices in the United States that will affect utilities. But that lagging effect could be 3 to 6 months, or even 9 months from now.
Yeah, in particular with the standard offer service, since it is bid out in the future, you could see potential impacts, and again, because it is bid and potential, you could see, kind of mitigating things. Something might happen to bring the prices back down. But right now, what we have currently, was contracted, previously. So we won't see anything going on right now, at least for a little time into the future. Probably.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Rob Garagiola, one of the concerns was that anything above 2 megawatts would be ineligible to receive that net energy metering credit. Could you speak to that?
Sure. So with the amendments from Chairman Clippinger, that addresses that. So basically, it would, whatever the treatment on net metering is being done, up to the 2 megawatts would be applicable with his amendment up to 5 megawatts. And then both the CPCN process as well as local government, regulations, et cetera, would be in play for the 2 to 5 megawatts. So kind of 2 layers of regulation that would occur at that level of it. And again, we're just talking community solar, not utility scale solar, which is much larger development.
Right now, anything less than 2 megawatts can be handled by local government. Anything 2 2.0 and above, it has to be a CPCN.
That's where things are today for all, exactly, for all generation.
Right, okay, all right. Delegate Mons, do I see your hand up?
Thanks, Chairman. And so who's offering these amendments?
Delegate Klippinger.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand the point of the amendment number 2.
Amendment number 2, that's the 423-721/1. What this is the one that says currently a generating station is not a community solar generating system is not considered an electric company, an electric supplier, or a generating station. The import of that, my understanding, is that if you put that qualifying language in saying that if the generating capacity doesn't exceed 2 megawatts, then any system that would exceed 2 megawatts up to 5 would then be possibly considered a generating station, and therefore subject to the CPCN process.
And is that limited to solar? If there was, I mean, is it just solar that can produce up to 2 megawatts and not be covered by the process? I think
This is specifically in language dealing with a community solar generating system. So the language we're dealing with only deals with solar.
the second part of this seems, I mean, it seems like it's redundant, right? What's already in the bill, what am I missing in that?
Well, what this is doing, this is in the community solar generating language. It's an additional portion because the bill itself simply said change the 2 megawatt cap to 5 megawatt cap, but it didn't change the qualifying language about whether the station would be considered a generating station and subject to CPCN or not. Without this language, a 5 megawatt plant, unlike any other 5 megawatt plant with any other technology that was not associated with a community energy generating system, would not be subject to CPCN. So that was a mistake in the bill, essentially.
That's a new section that's getting added to the back end of the bill, right?
It's actually within the current statute on the community solar energy generating systems. So that's amendment number 2 we're talking about. That's sort of conforming change, saying anything between 2 and 5 would be subject to CPCN.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
This applies to any new generating facilities. So whether or not you're at 2 megawatts already, it's going to lift the ceiling to 5 megawatts, right?
Only for the community systems.
So this is not limited to existing facilities or existing infrastructure.
No, I suppose if they were to add something on to increase the generating capacity of a 2 megawatt system, it would apply.
Yeah.
But of course, we're partway through a pilot program right now, so I'm not sure where the practical import is.
Yeah, and I guess do we know the cost of that net metering cost of the existing 2 megawatt community solar facilities that exist right now?
What do you mean? I'm sorry, sir. What do you mean by cost?
The cost, the net metering. I guess there isn't a way to do that because the baseline energy cost varies. But
I mean, what you're doing, you're taking the subscriber's current load and you're reducing it by whatever the credit they get from the community system that they subscribe to. That's the idea.
Right.
So as opposed to just taking supply from the utility.
And so it's pretty straightforward. You're either good with 2 or you want to go to 5. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Delegate Draconian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify, Amanda, you just had a conversation where you answered Delegate Fisher's question. And I think Delegate Fisher was pointing to the end of the fiscal note, local fiscal effect, small business effect. And I think it says, to the extent any local government or subscribers of community solar, the utility bills may increase. I think that was the conversation that that's what you were referring to in your conversation with him, Amanda, is that right?
Thank you, Delegate. I think when we're talking about the impacts on local governments, I think generally there are thoughts that, right, if they were a direct participant based on the original language, not on the amended language,
So,
there could be cost impacts.
so that was my question as I read it, that's only a concern if we don't adopt amendment number 1. But if we adopt amendment number 1, you don't expect there to be any increase in costs to local government, small business, et cetera. Is that correct?
I would think to participants, no. And I think, a good piece about the pilot, obviously, right, is we're trying to also study what the impacts are to the larger rate base and customers that aren't directly participating. And we're hoping to obviously derive some information about that as well. But I think that was our main concern at the time.
Okay. Thank you. So I think I would just reiterate what Delegate Mouse just said, which is that really the total amount of solar getting developed in the state doesn't change. The total amount of net metering in the state doesn't change. Like all of the other features that could affect some of the concerns that are raised doesn't change. The only thing that changes is whether an individual project can be 2 or 5, and 5 is much closer to what several other states that have adopted community solar programs after us have put in place. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comment about 440? Okay, Delegate Fisher.
Thank you. My last question on this one, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate your patience. This is also for Amanda from the PSC. Amanda, I was curious. Is there any requirement currently when solar panels are put into service and they have a 20 to 25 year useful life, and or someone has solar panels, let's say on their home or field, and the solar panels have, the technology has surpassed them. Is there any currently in law, any requirement that they be recycled by the PSC?
Thank you, Delegate. That's a good question. I would say that it probably depends on the system and the size. The larger utility scale projects do typically have decommissioning plans associated with them, and that is done through the CPCN process, that you would get that level of rigor. I would say on a more individual, like on a residential scale level, it probably varies depending on the company that is used and the contract signed with the customer. I'm not aware of any specific requirements for recycling right now, but I would say.
So there's no requirement by the PSC that any solar panel in the state of Maryland actually be recycled. So, which means it's going to end up in a landfill.
So I would say there is no, we do not have that requirement right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Vice Chair, go ahead.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to follow up, Amanda, on that point, but there has to be, just to clarify that, for every CPCN process, right, there has to be a decommissioning plan for each one of those, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Delegate Mons, is that your hand still up, or you still got another question?
I got another question. I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm bouncing around.
Okay, go ahead.
Real quickly. So when these projects grow, when we go from 2 to 5, I guess if they're outside of this, I guess this question's for you, Amanda. But if these projects grow from 2 to 5, currently they're outside of the PSC review, so they're able to do the community solar without just kind of how they want to do it. Is there, then there's no involvement or regulation? Is that the case?
So I would say that there are different levels of review. So if you're doing something that's 2 or less, You're correct. The PSC does not have currently a siting or CPCN type review process for those projects, but that's left to the local jurisdiction. So they have each their own types of review processes for siting in their counties. Once you get above that 2 megawatts, then it does become into the PSC jurisdiction for siting authority. And so that's when you'd have the full review process with multiple state agencies like the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of the Environment, et cetera, that participate. And that's where you get things like the decommissioning plans and more at a state level type of review.
So they go to 5 megawatt, there will be somebody to call if there's a problem.
Yes, so they would have to go through the siting review at the commission and go through that review process there.
Thanks for giving me a second chance. Thank you.
Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Amanda, just to be clear, there is no, at the state level, there is no recycling program. There is no baseline for a recycling program, and that during the CPN process, there's a decommissioning, I guess there's a decommissioning discussion. And the fact is that, and just for everybody's clarity, the fact is that decommissioning could include putting these things in a local landfill, or shipping them out of state to another landfill, or shipping them to another jurisdiction's landfill.
Thank you, Delegate. I would say that, and I obviously probably someone else might be maybe in the solar industry can help me out a little bit with this. I'm really more just familiar with the state level, PSC process for CPCNs, but typically a lot of that is worked out with the decommissioning plans. While it might not be state law, I'm aware that a lot of developers try to include recycling in their decommissioning plans at the utility scale project.
Do we have a state recycling? I mean, is there a state facility where these things go for recycling? Like, it's great to have a recycling plan if there's no place for them to go, then who cares? I mean, if there's nothing we can do with them, but you can put a plan in place, well, that's the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse.
That is a good question and a good point. Like I said, I'm not really aware of one in law right now. But
so there isn't one in law right now. I mean, we
not
all
that I'm
know
aware of.
that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay, any other discussion on HB 440? Okay, if not, what I want to do, I want to go ahead and we're just going to hold this bill for now. And Council, we can just go ahead and move on to the next bill.
Okay. House 622, offshore wind renewable energy credits. It's in your name. You have an amendment, a revised amendment that was sent through this afternoon. This is the bill that started out as a changing over the electric distribution companies to be essentially the payment agent for OREX. And with the amendments that I understand were worked on over in the Senate, although I don't think they've moved that bill yet either, you have a system where you are instead applying the requirements for OREX to electric companies for that portion of the tier 1, and allowing the imposition, as it normally would be, of a non-bypassable surcharge to have those passed along. You still have the existing caps on the bill impact. And then it also takes out some, at the back, takes out some language on a compliance fee for the industrial process load customers. There's someone else who worked on these amendments, possibly have amongst the advocates, have some particular observations on this.
All right, is Katie on? I don't see her, but primarily, as what council just said, this was to transfer that responsibility, the OREC responsibility from the electric suppliers over to the electric companies. So All right. Does anybody have any questions about this particular bill, HB 622? Okay, Delegate Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and forgive me, Mr. Chair and colleagues. My fiscal note is not, it's pulling up, but it's only starting on the analysis, and I don't have some of the other information, and maybe you can help me, Mr. Chair. It is your bill or one of the panelists.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I saw somewhere in the bill where it and I'm trying to kind of frantically go through it and pull up the information so it's a little bit more accurate, but I wanted to speed things along where
Be handled by existing resources.
it sort of talked about how the agents would be paid, and there was that we were unsure if what that would look like, how that would transpire, and how that would trickle down to the ratepayer, and essentially.
Yeah, the payment. Well, the electric companies, they would be the ones who would be collecting and making the payments, but
Right.
the PSC is the one who would determine what the rates are.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Counsel.
I'd say that's actually similar to current law, but the rewrite makes it a little more explicit how the electric company acts as the responsible party and the payment agent for collecting and then dispersing funds for the OREX.
Okay. So I guess the PSC has acted in the past in a capacity to limit the amount of I guess collection fees or cost.
Well, that's actually under the original legislation.
Okay.
And that wasn't, and it was extended, similar language is extended with CEJA passed for the second tier of offshore wind projects. Okay. I see Katie's here.
All right, Katie, do you want to add anything on to what was said?
No, Mr. Subcommittee Chair, I may have.
Okay, I think we have a bad connection. Katie, would you repeat that?
Just wanted to say, Mr. Subcommittee Chair, thank you very much for the work that you've done on the bill. I'm sorry I'm in the Senate.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's all right. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Delegate Amantz.
Yes, I've got a question for Public Service Commission if they're on.
They are.
So I guess nothing in this bill deals with the offshore wind siting. That's that boat's left already, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Delegate. That is correct, and that siting is done at the federal level with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. So all 4 projects now that have been approved through round 1 and round 2 are working with the federal government to try and complete siting those projects and complete their construction and operation plans.
Yeah, because I really haven't. I guess this is kind of off the bill, but I mean, what's going on out there in the water is pretty bad. I mean, a lot of people have been, they've been pushed off their fishing grounds by these survey boats. It's really bad. But I guess this doesn't deal with this. Is all the renewable credits. So I appreciate you answering my question. Thank you.
All right, and going back, Delegate Howard, you had asked a question about the fiscal note, and
actually, Mr. Chair, it was in the PSC's testimony, their written testimony, and it just says, and I think we got it covered. It says it's unclear at this time if the electric companies will attempt to collect from ratepayers additional amounts to cover the cost of acting as agents on behalf of the electricity supplier. So my question is that as far as the cost of acting as agents, is that something that the PSC reviews and sets? And, I just don't want there to be exorbitant amount of rates for them acting as agents.
All right. Okay. But I think what I read that it can be handled through existing resources. So that.
Yeah, but what does that mean? Like, what does the PSC actually do that now? Do they set, Katie?
Yes, Delegate, that's a great question. And I will tell you, you're right about that, that is what the PSC does. And that never came up, that never came up in terms of raising additional, more. The PSC will be the one who governs that.
Okay, all right.
Delegate Monson, your hand's still up, or you just forgot to put it down? Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions or comments about the HB 622? Okay, if not, can I get a motion on this bill?
The amendments.
Oh, the amendment. Yeah, can I get a motion on the amendments?
Move the amendments.
I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and second on the amendment. Okay, are you ready for questions or any questions? If none, can I get all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. 1, 2. Okay. So
I'm
think,
opposed.
Bob, do we need to take a roll? Take a record this? I see. Maybe
Is this on the bill as amended, or is this on the
It's on-
amendment?
this is on the amendment.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, I guess we can let's get a show of hands on those who are in favor.
Sorry, on the amendment?
On the amendment, yes. 1, 2. Okay, I see 3. All right, those who are opposed? I see 2. Okay, I guess that the amendment passes.
Oh,
Okay, now on the bill as amended. All
So
in-
moved.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and properly second on the bill as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay, opposed?
aye, I'm opposed.
Nay, or to the opposed.
All right.
I'm in the opposed also.
Mr. Chair, is Delegate Branch here?
Is
I
Has
see
he signed
him.
back on?
Delegate Branch or
And Delegate
for that
Crosby's
matter.
listening as well.
and Delegate Queen was here earlier.
Oh,
Yeah, she had to step away for a moment, she said.
Just hold it.
Well, we'll just hold the bill for right now.
All right.
I think that bill dies if there's only 6 of us. Just kidding. We'll hold it.
Yeah, we'll hold the bill. Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, let's go. Council, let's move on to HB 801.
House Bill 801.
That
is
wasn't
act-
even on my agenda, was it?
Yes, it is. This is the Natural Gas Stride Act of 2022. Delegate Branch's bill this year. It was Delegate Davis's bill last year. This is the bill that would say that if for a stride plan to invest in infrastructure replacement projects during a multi-year rate plan, each time the base rates are adjusted, the eligible project costs shall be included in the rate base, and then the surcharge shall continue for eligible future project costs that weren't included in the rate base. So essentially what this is doing is year by year, this is moving things over into the rate base as they're done under the stride plan. There are no amendments on the file.
All right, does anyone have any questions, comments on this bill? Okay, Delegate Howard.
Can we hold this bill? I do have some questions for BG&E about this bill and some of the testimony from Office of People's Counsel. and the Consumer Protection Division.
Okay, is BG&E on, Bob?
Charles Washington is here.
Okay, Mr. Washington?
Sure. Delegate, happy to come see you tomorrow morning. If that's how you prefer to speak.
Yeah, that'd probably be better. Just in lieu of that, testimony by a Consumer Protection Division. So,
I'll be waiting for you in the morning.
all right.
All righty then. Well, we'll go ahead and hold this bill if there are no other comments on that.
Mr. Chair, this is Josh Tolkien. Would it be appropriate to comment on that bill now, or should I save that for when it's brought back up in subcommittee?
It probably would be better if you were to do it when we bring it back up. So.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Okay, good enough.
And Delegate Brooks, if I may, this is Joe Cleaver from OPC. Just wanted to say to Delegate Howard, I'm happy to talk to him about any questions he may have about our comments.
Okay, Joe. Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, if none, well, this will conclude the Public Utilities Subcommittee meeting for today. And we will let everyone know ahead of time when we schedule the next subcommittee meeting. Okay, I'll say good evening to everybody. Good afternoon, I should say. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure.